Well, we can start with, so at Azul I was employee 50, which for a startup is actually a very large startup.
Right.
I think the thing that was unusual about Azul in that context was that we were a company that was trying to do a multitude of different things. So very unusually we were designing our own chip, designing our own hardware to go around the chip, designing some control systems and management systems to run these machines, and we actually built the operating system and ported the Java VM to that chip. So 50 sounds like a lot, but when you divide it essentially by 4, because we were sort of 4 startups in one, then it's actually not that huge. And that was the way that the company was organized. So we had a little bit of management overhead, but the whole, the entire company was run by one person.
Right.
And we had one admin for the whole company, and that was it. And then, and then we had the founders, and who were also the sort of the engineering VPs, and then a bunch of engineers. And that was pretty much it right at the beginning. And I think, so essentially the engineering teams were about 8 people, depending on whether you're working on the chip or the hardware or that. But it was, it was around about 8, 9. And that was a pretty good sized team for the kind of project that we were doing. In that it was a small enough team that you weren't overcome by a communication overhead and you didn't need to have meetings all the time. But it was big enough so that everybody had a big enough role to play and we could actually get concrete things done in a reasonable amount of time.
Right.
So a lot of the question about what makes a good team is about what sort of problem you're trying to accomplish, what sort of timeline you're trying to accomplish, and the dynamics of who your team already is.
Right.
Because I always say that it seems like it would be great if you, and this is a common parlance in Silicon Valley, if you would have a team of A players. But that really depends on what your definition of A player is.
Exactly.
Because if you go out and you hire 8 people, all of whom know exactly what they want to do, it'll be a disaster. Because they'll all know exactly what they want to do and it'll all be different. So building a perfect team is not just a matter of hiring really great technical people. It's a matter of also getting people where there's enough sort of social lubricant and understanding and willingness to compromise so that you actually have something that will work. It's like putting gears together. You can put together a set of gears to get it so that this wheel is turning this wheel at the right level. But if you don't put the oil in right and you don't put the gears in the right order, either the speeds are wrong or the gears are turned up. Is that a reasonably good analogy? I don't know. I just made it up on the spur of the moment. I'll have to use that one again.
All right. So I think, teams, going back to Andy's point of view, is you have to have that dynamic. And what makes that good team dynamic? To me, it's my personal experience, is one thing that I truly believe works everywhere is, as a team, you have to actually understand a general direction that you want to go towards, right? And then you all bring different perspectives and you debate what's the best way to go forward. But for me, the healthiest team environments actually debate ideas and not people. So they are all sort of like, I don't want to call them enlightened, but they are in a way, right? Because they come to the table with an understanding that at the end of the day we have to do X and that's good for the company, and I have my personal opinion and here's why I think it's the best way to do it. But at the same time they have enough sense to sit down and listen to other people, and it doesn't mean that they're actually passive. They're actively arguing and they're trying to make their argument the best sort of way to do it. But the whole point being is you debate ideas and not people. You have respect for the person that's sitting across from you because they're smart, they bring a different perspective. So that's the best team dynamic. And the other thing, and I'll add the startup, what does a startup need in a team? is really trying to understand the motivation of a person, right? And especially if you're a team leader or if you're a person that's actually trying to make things work. All of us tick, and you have to understand what makes a person tick, right? And understand if they are arguing about something, you want to go back to why, not just the peripheral thing about words, right? Try and pull back that discussion a little bit and understand, okay, here's why, and here's what they're saying. They're two different things, by the way. And if you address that why, everyone feels like they've been heard, and their concern has been heard. And that's how you bring people together. So, for me, there's a great TED Talk from I think Simon Sinek. He talks about the circle. In the center is the why, and then how, and the what, right? So be it ideas, be it products, be it marketing campaigns, a lot of the times we get stuck in, here's what I can do, here's all of that. But talk about why you're doing something, and that really is effective communication, and I think that works really well.
Yep. You have to manage everybody differently, and you have to lead people differently too.
Yeah.
And there's some people confuse leadership and management, and they're definitely two different things. Although they can be combined in a single individual, but leadership is setting direction for people and showing them the way and suggesting how it might be done and setting examples. Management is listening to people and accommodating their differences and putting together teams who fit together. And great leadership can make management less critical, and great management can make leadership less critical, but they're two different facets. And I think the way I like to look at it is that you only ever manage the people below you, in essence. If you have a team of 3 people, you can manage those 3 people. But if you're the VP of a company, you're not managing 55 people underneath you.
Right.
You're leading that engineering team, but you're managing the people who immediately report to you.
Right.
And that's kind of the difference. Because you can't truly have a personal relationship on a daily basis with 55 people, all of whom are very busy, or should be. But you can lead them on a daily basis, right? And again, setting examples, setting goals, setting expectations, that kind of thing. And management is about managing those expectations and making sure that people meet them, and if they don't, what the consequence is, and how to get the best out of people.
And there is actually a human element to all of this, right? Managing, again, goes back to that. If an employee or team member doesn't feel heard, doesn't feel motivated, doesn't feel rewarded, it's just easy to lose them, right? Because at the end of the day, money is a great thing, and all of us actually want money. There is no philanthropic startup, but at the same time, that feeling of I'm recognized, my ideas are recognized, it's a really central part of management.
Absolutely, and I think the key thing of a successful startup is it's not giving everybody lots of stock, although they'll want that.
Right.
It's absolutely making them understand that they have a pivotal role in the end product, and that's what gets buy-in, and that's what keeps people enthused, because you're going to go through some really hard times over and over again, and feeling that you're making a difference. And by the way, I mean it's not just true of startups; it's true of any company. It's true
for anything, right? And especially startups, it's easy. For example, one of the employees contributes an idea, and a customer loves that feature. It's critical to communicate that back. We lose sight of that all the time, by the way. It's easy to say, wow, the customer is happy, but if you have the sense to actually say, hey, person X, you suggested this idea, and here's the customer feedback that we got. How, they just, there's no parallel to it in terms of money, in terms of other things. They just feel
satisfaction.
Right, exactly.
From that exactly.
Yeah, and I suppose actually that's interestingly one of the reasons why I ended up leaving Azul and going back to Apple.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I enjoyed when I had been at Apple was the sort of the visceral emotional response I got from our customers when I just met them
Yeah.
in random places, be it on the train, in Starbucks, and just hearing that people really liked our products and what they liked about them, or alternatively what they didn't like. And we did kind of lose that a bit at Azul because we were building a product that was for big companies, and so that sort of customer feedback and that pleasure with using the product, even though we got a lot of customers who really liked it,
Yeah.
it isn't the same as somebody coming up to you and saying, "I really love how this works. You did a great job," kind of thing. It's just different.
And I think, there's something, like we talked about how we were at Azul at different times, but the culture continued, and I think they had a lot of elements that we talked about. You never felt like somebody criticized your idea. People just actually listened to you. And then we had a culture of really getting to know people. Like we would sit down at the lunch table and sort of have conversations that have nothing to do with work, right? We all had variety of interests, like I love reading and I find people to discuss my books and philosophy and poetry, and it's like you find people like that at Azul, and it's awesome, and you build those friendships. And when you have that sort of relationship, you go into a team meeting and you talk, people actually are sitting down and listening, and you have the freedom to sort of like throw a suggestion that's out of the whack, and people were happy to just entertain that idea. And of course, people argued fiercely, by the way, at Azul. I even heard really interesting stories too.
Oh, we did.
But at the end of the day, nobody had bad blood because of the arguments.
No, very rarely.
Yeah.
And I think one fundamental thing in business, and especially in startups, that was hammered into us over time is that quite often it's when you're having discussions and arguments about something, it's more important most of the time to make a decision, move on, execute on it, but monitor it, and if you realize you've made a mistake, to fix it, rather than endlessly churn on something. Much more, because you will more often than not be right if you thought about it, or you'll be mostly right. You'll be right enough, and so you're going to get most of the benefit out of that. And even if you're somewhat wrong, you'll learn something that you could have just churned on and made the wrong judgment anyway. So I mean, I think that's one thing that just really sticks in my head ever since I've arrived here. It's just like you really don't spin on decisions endlessly. You just kind of you kind of like even in the absence of lots of data, you have to go with a decision because it's you're gonna learn more.
All right, that's it.
And you're gonna learn it faster.
Yeah.